Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, and today we are doing a showdown of two AMD cards. It's going to be the Asus R9 285 Strix against the Asus DirectCu2 R9 280X. Now this one I have right here is the top edition, but the one I actually tested it against was just the standard DirectCu2, not the top edition. This one right here I'm just having for basically viewing purposes only, as I couldn't actually get my hands on the 2-slot DirectCu2 to show off to you guys again, although we have previously tested it. So I have all those results already. So let's get straight into it then with the GPUs. It's always a good place to start. So both of them are 28nm. The 285 has the Tonga GPU in it, whereas the 280X has, of course, the Tahiti GPU, same as the 280 as well, which is getting on a bit now. It's an old GPU, but it's not bad. It's definitely not bad. So the 285 comes in with 1,792 stream processors, which is the exact same as the R9 280, but slightly less than what you get in the 280X. And it's the exact same thing for texture units. 285 has the same amount as in the 280, but slightly less than the 280X. Now the GPU on this particular one is running at reference, so that's 954 megahertz on this 285, whereas the DC2 I tested was just running at 1000 megahertz or 1 gigahertz. Now memory. So this is where it was quite interesting, and I had a lot of people talking about it. So the 285 has a 256-bit memory bus, whereas the 280X has a 384-bit memory bus. Not only that, but there's a difference in memory speed. So the bus, basically, that's just memory bandwidth, and then the memory speed, the 285 is coming in with 5,500 megahertz, whereas the 280X is coming in at 6,000 megahertz. And there's also the memory amounts, of course, where the 285 only has 2 gigabytes to the 280X's 3 gigabytes, and the 280 as well. So you might be thinking it's a bit of a downgrade. It's not. Just like if you watch the previous video when I did the GTX 970 against the GTX 780, this video is quite similar. There's a lot of similarities in it. But basically, just like how the 970 980s are on a 256-bit memory bus, it's not a downgrade because of the new features, the way their memory compression works and stuff like that. It actually isn't a downgrade. It may seem like it, but it isn't, trust me. So, not a downgrade. Which leads us into the features. So obviously, the 285 is a much newer GPU and has a lot of extra features over the 280. So it has improved tessellation performance, lossless delta color compression, so 40% higher memory efficiency, that's just what we were just talking about, updated ISI instruction sets, high quality scaler, true audio, which is a big thing to a lot of people, and a new multimedia engine for faster video playback, editing, and transcoding. Not only that, but you get the usual carry-on, which is Mantle, and of course FreeSync, which will be coming out further down the road. Now cooler-wise, and we compare it to the just 2-slot DirectCu2, the coolers are exactly the same. It's the DirectCu2 on the Strix. There's no difference except the shrouding has been changed and these fans themselves have been changed. But the cooler is just the same DirectCu2 we've seen for a while, which doesn't generally work that well on AMD cards. They have added their 0 decibel fans, so just like on the 970. So under 65 degrees Celsius, the fans will not be spinning. They'll just be still, which means obviously there's no noise coming from the fans. So that's really good. And that means in sort of like low intensity games such as League of Legends, or or if you run games in quite low settings, then the GPU won't be going above 65 degrees Celsius, so then there'll be absolutely no noise coming from the GPU. Now, size-wise, I did it in inches this time, just because it's something different, and for all you Americans out there. So, the 285 is coming in at 10.6 inches long, 5.5 inches wide, and 1.6 inches tall, And the 2-slot DirectCu2 280X is coming in at 11.2 inches long, so slightly longer, 5.7 inches wide, so ever so slightly wider, and 1.5 inches thick, so it's actually slightly thinner. And now let's get into the benchmarks, what you all came here to see. So I can't do my firmware testing or the Unigine Valley testing because just like on the GTX 970 and 980, the 285 has, funny memory, so it doesn't really work with those two benchmarks, but I'll go through the other ones like normal. So we'll go straight on to Heaven. This is DirectX 11 1080p, everything maxed out. The R9 285 Strix scored 35.2 frames per second average. The 280X DirectCu2 scored 38 frames per second flat. So, about 3 frames there, better for the 280X in Heaven, the DirectX 11. Now let's do Heaven again, this time in OpenGL, once again everything maxed out, 1080p. The R9 285 Strix scored 26.6 frames per second average. The DirectCu2 280X scored 31 frames per second average. So, quite interesting there. Before we go into the next benchmark, I just have to mention one other thing. If you're already written in the comments or were about to complain to me saying, well, the 285 was never meant to compete against the 280X or whatever you were going to say. In New Zealand, and I base my showdowns off pricing, because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. You got so much you want to spend on a graphics card, and so you look at the graphics cards within that price range. In New Zealand, 280Xs and R9 285s are the exact same price, or very, very similar. Give or take, $20, $30, plus or minus. So that's why I did this benchmark against those two against each other, because they're pretty much the same price. So that's what people will be asking is, well, should I, get the 285 or should I get the 280X because I got the same amount of money to spend. And it's not going to cost me more or less one way or the other depending on which model it is, etc. So that's why I did these two particular cards. Anyways, on with the benchmarks and Tomb Raider. So this is 1080p, everything maxed out without VSync. The R9 285 Strix scored an average of 53.6 frames per second. The DirectCu2 R9 280X scored 66.5 frames per second average, so a massive win there in Tomb Raider. And lastly, Bioshock Infinite. This is everything maxed out 1080p. The R9 285 scored 88 frames per second average. The DirectCu2 R9 280X scored 98 frames per second average, so 10 frames better. It's just mind-blowing the difference between these two cards in terms of, the performance. The 285 is a much newer GPU, but it just cannot compete with the old Tahiti. So in performance is just a decisive win for the 280X. The 285 just cannot keep up with that old Tahiti GPU, which is quite bizarre. Now we'll go into temperatures. So I took the temperatures during the Heaven benchmark. The Strix went up to 70 degrees Celsius, which is very good. So it does cool very efficiently. Was quite pleased with that. The efficiency of the GPU, I think it's very low heat output, and also this has quite a good cooler. The DirectCu2 I tested went up to 77 degrees Celsius, which is because the Asus DirectCu2 280X coolers are not very good. And so that's kind of to be expected. So temperature wise, good win there for the 285. Now let's get into noise. So this one is, again, a little bit more difficult to do. Although the cooling on the DirectCu2 isn't that good, the fan noise is still very low, which is always nice to see. There's no point me doing the idles because both the cards were completely silent. I mean, the Strix, the fans weren't even turned on, so there's no point showing you guys. It's just 0 decibels. So there's that. But I will show you what they sound like on load. Now this was during the Unigine Valley benchmark on the Extreme HD preset. I didn't show you the actual benchmark because the results came out so weird. but I'll show you what, the cars were still on full load, so I'll show you what they sounded like noise-wise during the benchmark. So here is the R9 285. And here is the 2-slot Asus DirectCu2 R9 280X during the same benchmark. So yeah, pretty much what you'd expect. The DirectCu2 cooler is very quiet. I've always been impressed with it in that sense, but sometimes the cooling isn't up to par. But as far as noise goes, no complaints here. So which one would I pick and which one would I recommend, given that these are very similarly priced? Well, I just have to give it to the 280X. I don't know why you would go for the R9 285. I just don't understand why it's placed where it is in the market. Honestly, it could have a place, but at the price point in New Zealand, it's just not worth it. If it was, say, $100 cheaper or something like that, then I could see where it would lie in the market a bit better. But it's just funny how AMD have set up their graphics cards, you know, in the market. But for this one, you know, the 285 does win, I'd say, in terms of noise, obviously, because the fans turn off, so that's quite good. It's completely silent at idle or just, you know, low loads. So it does win in that sense. In temperatures, it is very good, and it does come with more features. But at the end of the day, most gamers think about the raw performance. That's what they look for. That's why you guys look at the benchmarks and things like that. You want to see just how powerful the card actually is. And in that sense, the 280X just flat out wins. It is, you know, in some of the benchmarks, 10 frames per second better on the 280X, and that just can't be ignored. So if where you live, if the R9 280X and the 285 are the exact same price or very, very similar, I would recommend the 280X. If there is a big price discrepancy in terms of the 280X is a lot more expensive than the 285, then maybe consider it. But honestly, I still don't think it would be worth it, really. Yeah, so this is just a flat-out win for the 280X, and as I said before, a polar contrast to the 970 versus 780 video, where I said go for the 970 because it's like, you know, the very similar performance or slightly better performance than a 780, but with all the extra features and all the benefits. So it is worth it. But this time, with all those features and stuff like that, which are nice, I still don't think it outdoes the 280X because the raw performance is just too much of a win. For me personally anyways. But as always, let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with me? Do you think the 280X is superior to the 285? And let me know the price difference where you live and which one you would pick because of that price difference. Anyways, I thank you guys for watching this Tech Showdown, and of course, I'll see you next time.